Charles, your father once wrote a poem about me. It is called Philosopher at Large, and it is dedicated to Mortimer Adler. And I've read it with great pleasure, and obviously with great gratitude. But it puzzles me, because I'm not sure I understand it. You know, one of my recommendations to any reader to test whether he understands a philosophical book or a historical book, anything, any kind of book, not just poetry, is that he should be able to say in his own words what the author says. And when I try to say in my words, in prose propositions, what this poem says about me, I fail. I don't quite say it. There's something the poem says that I can't say. And that's why I think I don't fully understand it.
Have you ever read it aloud, Mortimer?
I don't think I have.
Well, read it aloud and see how it works.
You know, before I do that, let me say I've done this also with students in reading philosophical books. When they say, I don't understand what Kant says, or I don't understand what Aristotle says, I always say, read the passage out loud for me. Because when I hear them read it out loud, I can hear them not understanding it, the way they read it. Now, maybe I'll show you that I don't understand it by the way I read it.
Maybe
Shall I try?
Yeah.
Here goes. The ancient garden, where most men step daintily, in specimen dust, he bulldozes, plows deep, moves earth, says someone must, if truth is ever to be found, that so long since went underground. What truth? Why down? He shakes his head. He does not know. But roots and rocks go tumbling, tearing, as his blade, shivering from its own shocks, bites further, and upturns pure clay he does not pause to smooth away, and horrifies those men by hedge and dust plot, whom the top sufficed. They thought the garden theirs, and still it is, but the air is spiced with damp new things dug up, or old, he says, like God, like buried gold.
You read it very well, Mortimer. You read it as a poem should be read, with feeling, with understanding. I can't fault your reading, so I don't understand why you don't understand the poem. Remember one thing about a poem. If you're describing the plot of a novel that may be 1,000 pages long, your description of the plot might be 1,000th as long as the novel is. In the case of a poem, a lyric poem, your description of what it says might be longer than the poem itself. But anyway, try it. What does it say?
Well, it says that where others are satisfied with the superficial understanding of what the thought of mankind has been, I dig deeper than they. I bulldoze, I plow deep, and bring up a gold they did not know was buried there.
How do you read the line, in specimen dust?
I'm glad you asked. Those are the words I don't understand. What does he mean by specimen dust?
Well, that's the key to the poem. That's
really?
That's the key word.
That may be why I don't understand
and the word is used later on, too. Let me see it.
What does he mean by specimen?
The ancient garden where most men step daintily in specimen dust, he bulldozes. And that's the conflict, that's the striking, shocking thing that my father always thought that you did. It's as though most men consider the past as a kind of museum.
Oh, specimen.
And with specimens in it, specimens of animals or specimens of Greek columns or something like that. And you have the effrontery to go in with your bulldozer, because you have, I mean, when he says, but roots and rocks go tumbling, tearing as his blade, shivering from its own shocks, bites farther. And my father was thinking of a bulldozer tearing through a garden, tearing through a museum.
I hadn't thought about that.
And that's a terrible thing for a man to do. But it is what he always thought you did. He admired you enormously for it, but he understood why other men, viewing the past of philosophy as a kind of museum, were shocked by what you did.
That's very extraordinary, because those were the words, as I read that I didn't understand.
I thought they might be. I'll read you another poem.
Please.
Which you know very well, which everybody knows very well, which every English child learns by heart in school, as a matter of fact, and yet which I think 99% of all readers misunderstand. It's the poem by Wordsworth, composed upon Westminster Bridge.
One of my favorite sonnets.
September 3, 1802. He's looking at the city of London. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. This city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning. Silent, bare, ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor valley, rock, or hill. Ne'er saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. And that's a lovely poem. What does it say? What is the profound irony in it, Mortimer?
That this city, this great city that Wordsworth loves and expresses his love for in the first 12 lines,
I don't think he does express his love for this city. I think he expresses his hatred and abomination of this city in the first 12 lines, and that's what the irony of the poem is.
Well, where do you find hatred and abomination? I can't find it at all.
The city is beautiful, Mortimer, because it's asleep. The city, which is an abomination upon the countryside, with its smoke that fills the air, with its noise, its turmoil, its chaos that disturbs the nature that it has invaded.
But in the early morning, when it's not alive, not awake.
When it's not itself, it is beautiful.
Oh, I see.
Because it reminds the poet of what this valley of the Thames would look like if the city were not there.
I'm sorry to say that though I've read that poem many, many times and enjoyed it, I've never understood it before.
But isn't that true? Isn't
Absolutely
it clearly
yes.
true that that's what he is saying?
Also, it's true in terms of what one knows about Wordsworth.
Exactly, exactly.
But I...
the poet of nature could not have written a poem about
If I had asked
London.
myself that question, I would have caught it, I think. No, I think that's extraordinarily good. Not all lyric poetry has a hidden meaning of this kind. Let me interrupt you for a moment to say one of my favorite poems by Wordsworth, I'm going to read it to you for a moment, I think it's perfectly clear, and I understand it's all on the surface. There's no hidden meaning here. Every child knows this poem. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began. So is it now I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old or let me die. The child is father of the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. That seems perfectly clear to me.
Yeah, I think it's too clear.
Oh, is that why it's not a great poem?
I think it's a homily, and homilies are fundamentally not very
Now, are you
poems.
saying that a great lyric poem requires depth that this doesn't have?
Yes. It's a superficial poem, Mortimer, and a superficial poem is not the best kind.
You know, would you say that, I think I read philosophical books and scientific books, even mathematical books, with great attention to every word and to what lies between the lines as well as what's on the lines. And yet I suppose I don't read lyrics that way.
No, you probably don't. You probably, I mean, when you read a philosophical book, you look for the key words. And in a poem, it is also necessary to look for the key word and to understand often the meaning of a poem hangs on a single word. I'll give you an example, another example of a poem that you not only know, but like very much, and this is Shakespeare's famous sonnet 116.
Yes.
It starts out, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments.
Love is not love that alters when it alteration finds.
Exactly, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark, and so forth and so on. Now, let me ask you a question about this poem. Just in that first sentence, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. What's the meaning of the word admits? Allow in a logical sense. Let me not concede that there are
any
impediments,
to the marriage of two minds.
But there's another meaning of admit, isn't there?
Admit? Concede?
No. Well, no, that's, again, the logical meaning.
I admit you to my room.
Yes, but that's a physical action.
Yeah.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds. Let people come in to stand between us. And then there's a quite different meaning of admit.
But tell me, though, how does the second sentence follow the first? Why does, having said, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments, why does the poet go on to say, love is not love that alters when it alteration finds?
Well, that's the point, you see. There are impediments to any marriage of true minds, or indeed to any love. They come into it, and these are physical people or events or circumstances that come in. It's not purely a logical concession or admission, but people come in and interrupt a great love. And therefore, he goes on to say, if love changes, when that kind of change occurs, it's not truly love.
I see.
Now, if you haven't caught that double meaning of the word admits, you have lost the meaning. I'll give you one more example, and here is another poem. I think it is probably the most beloved of all American poems. The poem that's best known to young people in this country. It's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Those were my father's favorite lines in all of Frost. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now there is just as profound irony or ambiguity or problem in this poem as there is in the Wordsworth one. Yeah, and the way to identify it is to say, what is the difference between the poet's desire and his message in this poem? His message is, pretty clearly, that I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. I must get on and go on with the business of life and so forth. But what is his desire as expressed in the poem?
To stay in the woods?
Yes, but what does the word sleep mean?
I don't know.
I think to die. Sleep means two things. It has meant two things for poets for 2,500 years. It means both the sleep from which you awake and the sleep from which you do not awake, that is death. And Frost wrote this poem in a period of a very great unhappiness and almost despair. And this poem that is sentimentally viewed as a kind of paean to life and an invitation to life has truly and genuinely at its heart this frightful vision of the attraction of death. Of course, what we're emphasizing here in what we're saying about this Frost poem is the necessity of reading a poem over and over again, out loud, and then to yourself, and then out loud once more, because you must find that key word on which the meaning of the poem hangs. And in the case of Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, I'm sure it's the last word.